All eyes on thee. All eyes on thee. Positively.
Happy day, happy day.
All eyes on
I have on today the beautiful women from the Well Project. We're going to talk a little bit about women and HIV and breastfeeding. Step up, get up, get up. Only got one life to live it up. It's going to be an amazing show, you guys. The Well Project was founded in 2002. They provide tools for women to build a foundation to not only survive, but also to thrive with HIV.
All eyes on thee. All eyes on thee. Positively D.
Happy day, happy day. This is Positively D discussion. You have to remember that HIV still exists. You have to get tested. You have to use protection, because if you have contracted HIV, guess what? You could get on medication and you could live a better, healthier life. And like I said, I have on 3 beautiful women from the Well Project. And we're going to talk about breastfeeding and what the Well Project does, for women who live with HIV. I'll read a little bit. So I said they were founded in 2002. And it is designed specifically for women living with HIV and vulnerable to HIV. And by prioritizing the advancements of women in all aspects of HIV prevention, treatment, and cure, research, and policy. We're gonna go ahead and let's talk to Krista first. And let me know when you started out with the Well Project and what prompted you to want to be involved with such a wonderful organization.
Hi, well, thank you for having us here today. Very honored to be on your show. And yeah, so my journey actually started back in, well, technically in, I guess, 1994, my sister was diagnosed with AIDS. And the next year, in 1995, I moved to New York and I was looking for work, and I wasn't necessarily looking for a job in HIV, but I found one and kind of very haphazardly. And I quickly, after my sister was diagnosed, I just very quickly saw just the amount of stigma that was surrounding the disease, and also trying to find her some kind of community support. I realized how hard it was for to find other women, so just all the support groups, there were no women there. And so those were 2 things that stuck out. And so then when I started working, I also was just struck by, the lack of information around women or women's involvement. And then luckily, a program kind of came through where I was working, and it was focused on women. And basically it was going to model a program called HIV University that was started by World out in Oakland, California. Rebecca Dennison was the founder. And we were able to, and HIV University was this peer-based treatment education program that they did, and they would build these courses and have a graduation. So we used that as a model to bring women from all over the country multiple times. It was like a week-long training to learn how to do their own HIV University back in their hometown. And so we would train 10 teams of 2 women, and we did that 3 or 4 times. And it was where I really got, to know a lot of the, current leaders in the women's world, but including Dawn Averett, who's the founder of the Well Project. And she was part of our planning committee for the training course. And she kind of oversaw the treatment education and advocacy component of the training that we did. And so Dawn and I became good friends, and she was kind of a mentor to me. And I just always, really liked working with her. And then years later, she started the Well Project, but it was based in first in, I think, Atlanta, and then it moved to North Carolina, and I live in Brooklyn. And so even though I loved what she was doing, it wasn't really something that I could get involved in.
Right.
And then in 2009, she decided that maybe it could go virtual. And so that's when I came on, and she kind of handed me the keys to the car and said, hey, do what you want. And that's when we started the blog, A Girl Like Me, because at that time it was, she just really wanted to have a hub for information that was specific to women. So as we still have our library of fact sheets, that was the main component. But then we added A Girl Like Me blog, and then we started doing some more advocacy training and leadership development. The Women's Research Initiative was another program that she started, and that started in 2003 to really advance research for women living with HIV. And then we also started kind of really emphasizing the importance of partnerships, and started to work with other organizations and collaboration, and trying to build the bridges of all the different things that people are doing, especially around women or that would affect women. So yeah, and so 2013 is when I became executive director, and here we are.
So 20 years, the Well Project has been up and running for 20 years. I met you a few years ago, maybe about 6 years ago, I think, just, seeing your face and the website and everything. So I just want to tell the Well Project, thank you, for doing what they do for women who live with HIV and those who are affected by HIV, because there's so much information on that website. Now, Olivia, and you, when did you start out at the Well Project? You can introduce yourself as well.
Hi. It's so much fun to be here. Thank you so much for having us. And Krista, thank you so much for setting off the intro to the Well Project. I'm Olivia Ford, she or they pronouns, and I'm the editorial director for the Well Project. And that's just my most recent role. I've been in that position for close to a year, but I've been working consistently with the Well Project since about middle of 2015. So I'm going on 7 years of the Well Project being at the center of my life, of my work life, and just my life in general. I mean, we're a really, we're just a very small, mighty, close-knit team. But I really grew into that role, starting just doing some consulting with the Well Project. But again, Krista and I had known each other for a few years. I definitely was very familiar with Dawn, and with the founding of the Well Project. I had been working, I sort of started out directly working in HIV. So I was an editor at The Body, and I really sort of came to, I come to all of this work through kind of the media lens and through storytelling. And, based on that, I was really familiar with the Well Project. They were a content provider at The Body. And, I had met Krista a bunch of times, and we, I was at The Body, and then I left, and I sort of started to kind of work flirt, as I always say, a little bit with Krista, and sort of, recognizing that there were only a few places as far as sort of organizations that I really wanted to work in HIV.
Right.
I really, I've been really blessed to have some really phenomenal roles, and been in some really amazing spaces in this community, in this field. And I knew I wanted to apply my kind of editorial background and skills to an organization that I felt passionately about. I wanted to work around sexual and reproductive health and women living with HIV. And how many places can one do that? Sort of
Right.
be in the kind of editorial storytelling media space, and also be working directly with women living with HIV across the gender spectrum, and just providing a valuable space and service. And I just always love the work that the Ball Project is doing. And I just feel like, honestly, it's kind of a dream come true. I've been really, I say that a lot. I feel very blessed in terms of my, life in general and my work life in particular, to get to do the work that I do with the unbelievably amazing, growing team that I get to work with.
Well, I want to say thank you to both of you, because I always say a lot of people don't realize you don't have to be living with HIV to do the work. Just being an ally, and some people who don't live with HIV push harder than the people who do live with HIV. You want so bad to help because you feel so connected for one reason or another, like Krista's sister. So I'm telling both of you, I'm saying to both of you, thank you so much, for being such strong allies, working to get this stigma, that I always call it, of HIV, internally for a lot of women, helping them to get over living with HIV. And like I said, everybody who is watching, the Well Project has a blog that you can go to. You can go to thewellproject.org, thewellproject.org, and you can read a lot of those blogs. And I'm going to talk to one of these beautiful bloggers right here. Her name is Cece, and we're gonna talk to her a little bit. She can say who she is and how did she get connected to the Well Project. And I'm gonna read a little bit of one of her blogs too, not all of it, but just a little bit of it. Hi, Cece.
Hey, Dee. Hello. Thank you so much once again for having me, for having us. So I am Sierra Cece Coven. I'm a little embarrassed you're going to read a blog, but I blog. So thank you. I am now the program coordinator for the Well Project. I just came up on my 1-year anniversary. So when we talk about leadership development, they have this on lock. I can speak first-handedly to this. I started in 2018, my journey to the Well Project, I love it. In 2018, I started my own blog, which was called Healing is Voluntary. That was, unbeknownst to me, I had come out to Facebook on World AIDS Day of 2018 and disclosed my status publicly. Had already been doing it in my own little, personal space, but to get online, that was a whole different beast. So I did that. I'm writing. And I came across Maria Meja on Instagram. She has such a great name. It's like Maria HIV or something. So of course, when I searched it, she came up. And I sent her my blog as I was doing everybody. I was sending it to like T.I. and Erykah Badu, like big people. I just was read this because everyone could use some HIV education, right? So when I sent it to Maria, she said, why aren't you blogging for us? And I was like, well, who are y'all? And she let me know then about the Well Project. So what I'm so grateful for is that I could write in my own space and then share those pieces with the Well Project, and they would share it. And my voice was not watered down. It was not like, it could still be in my same tone and coming out of a workspace where that was not what I was used to. You have to dot all your I's and cross all your T's, and that is not what was taken away from me with the Well Project. So I continued to write, and I got involved with the CAB. I think it was in the beginning of 2019. So I went from blogger to CAB member, which did so much for my self-esteem, work self-esteem. If that's a thing, it's like, whoa, people are actually acknowledging my voice and my experience, and it means something somewhere. And then I, at the end of 2019, because of a blog I had written, which was called Liquid Gold, that was about my experience of not being able to breastfeed my first child. Now, once again, I did not know that I was writing to really help anyone else. I just knew that it was very healing for me. And that got me a seat on our panel that we did at USC, at USCHA now, talking on the U equals U tract about breastfeeding in the context of U equals U. So I got to sit down with Krista, Claire, Dr. Marielle Gross, and me and on this panel. It's like, whoa, all because of that writing that I had started in 2018. And then I got invited to join the team, which I agree with Olivia. This does still feel like a dream. I never ever thought that I would be working, doing things that I love and get to inspire and motivate and help so many other women. It's the empowerment of it all. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm sorry about that. I forgot about your position, so I'm going to clap my hands to that one. It's always nice, though, to do the work that you enjoy. It makes you want to get up every day, you know, and be able to fight for other people. It's not like working. You have to get up and go work at McDonald's and you're saying, oh, you know, I just don't feel like doing this right now. But when it's a passion that you feel so strong about, it makes you feel so good just to wake up in the morning because you know that you're doing something that you love so much. And I said that the show is going to be, we're going to talk a little bit about breastfeeding first. And I want to ask you guys, and either one of you can answer the question. I want to talk to you about, you know, can women who live with HIV breastfeed? And what are the challenges with this here, you know, in the United States? Eeny, meeny, miny, moe.
Who wants to respond? Well, I'll take a stab, but I would love for my comrades to jump in.
Yeah,
So
jump in if you feel like
the answer is, can they? Yes. Is it like easy or, you know, fully supported? Probably would tend towards no. So there's the DHHS, which is the Department of Health and Human Services. Their perinatal guidelines currently say that it's not, you know, currently say, but it might be changed in the near future or updated, but they, you know, that it's not recommended to breastfeed. But if a woman chooses to breastfeed, she should be supported by her healthcare team. And then they go on to provide like what that means. And because there is research, we have research that shows that if a woman has a sustained undetectable viral load especially throughout pregnancy and breastfeeding, there's like a less than 1% chance of transmission. Right. And, you know, and then there's even more, you know, different things that could even help all of that. But a lot of people just see the recommended not to breastfeed. They don't kind of maybe even know about all of that other, you know, supportive information. So, and then the CDC on the other side, like hadn't kind of updated yet, but that should be changing soon. Their guidance to kind of reflect what the perinatal guidelines say. So right now, you know, in the US, it is like still not saying like, you know, to recommend it, but we're gaining momentum to have more, you know, awareness around supporting a woman to make an informed decision about how she wants to feed her baby. And so that's really exciting. And so, and then just as like an aside, in other parts of the world, like under the WHO guidelines, World Health Organization guidelines, it is recommended to exclusively breastfeed or to breastfeed. So that's where there's also just a lot of confusion, because if you live in one place, it says something, and you live in another place in high resource countries, like including the US and Canada and the UK and Australia, there's a totally different set of guidance. So that's my short answer. But you guys can also jump in, and I didn't talk about the obstacles because there's a lot.
Gosh, I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is. I wanted so bad when I had my daughter 20 years ago to breastfeed, but I didn't even prompt the question. It didn't even dawn on me to say anything, you know? And that was 20 years ago though. So of course you didn't think that this was something that you could do. And I wish now that I probably would have said something just to see what answer I would have gotten. but I wasn't an advocate then. And when you're not an advocate and you don't know how to talk to your providers or, to talk about your own health, a lot of women don't know how to do that. Maybe if I would have spoke up, I would have gotten some answers. So go ahead, Olivia.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience, first of all, Dee. And obviously, I'm sure from talking to other women living with HIV that you're definitely not alone in that sense of, but I didn't even realize that there were any options. 20 years ago, though, and even really a year ago, if it really came down to who someone's provider was. And my sense, just anecdotally, is that in the US specifically, that number of providers that would say, well, actually, this is and I want to underline this, standard of care in other parts of the world,
Right.
where resources are more limited, but where people are, we all live here on the planet. We're all the same species. And in other parts of the world, for the past, I think it's about, don't quote me on this, I believe it's only just been about 12 years that's been the recommendation from the WHO. So it's not that it's been since the beginning, certainly, since the beginning of the pandemic or of the HIV pandemic. But it's still a significant amount of time. But yeah, 20 years ago,
A long time ago.
it's short in you are youthful, beautiful. Your child is 20 years old. That's young. But in terms of the, kind of the development of research, that is a super long time ago in terms of what, kind of knowing, not necessarily knowing then what we know now. But what we did know then, which has also taken a long time to reach sort of a wider swath of women living with HIV and people in the world in general, is that people could have babies who are HIV negative.
Right.
There are still women now who aren't aware of that. And that's something that we have known since 1996. Research sort of confirmed that in 1996. And it still surprises some people that a parent living with HIV can give birth to a baby who's not living with HIV. Anyway, just my little interjection. I'm sorry, I really want to.
Oh, no, that's okay. Thank you. Because I was going to ask, about other countries. And we know that in other countries, they have to breastfeed. So how do you prevent or tell a woman that they can't breastfeed in other countries and they're living with HIV? There's nowhere possible that you can do that. They don't have clean water. I don't think even the formula, they've been breastfeeding in other countries for years. This is what we do, right, ladies? We breastfeed. This is what we do. This is how God made us. It's to feed our children from our breast. So what about in other countries, Have you heard of any pushback at all? You said with the WHO, they just put this in their guidelines, 12 years ago. So what about before the 12 years, How did that work out if you knew anything about it before the 12 years and how that would work with women who live with HIV? I know some women who live with HIV in other countries, and no one knows they live with HIV, and they breastfeed, and they won't tell because they say if they don't breastfeed, people are going to question why they're not breastfeeding. So they just keep it to themselves. And if any of you have any take on that, I'd like to hear what you have to say. And then I'll go over here and read Cece's blog and talk to her about her choices of breastfeeding.
I would like to step in for a second and kind of challenge some of the language that we're using real quick, right? So you pose a question of, can a woman living with HIV breastfeed? A woman living with HIV could do whatever she wants to do, all right? You know that, I know that, right? Now it's just the repercussions and the consequences that comes behind it. So we get into things like criminalization,
right.
Of reaction, from the woman that that's not living here to not breastfeed. Right. A consequence of that could be potentially exposing her status to people that she has not shared that with yet. So of course we can choose to do whatever we would, but as Krista pointed out, that support that that we all so very much need and desire and really could benefit from. That is the piece that is missing, over here. I had always questioned it. Had I been born in another place, would I be able to feed my child from my body? And that question has become answered, from so many other women that I know that's not living here. And the question was not, or it wasn't how you're going to feed your child. It was more so how long you choose to feed your child from your body, although you're living with HIV. So I just wanted to jump in and give my little 2 cents on that.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a little tears coming to me because, like I said, I really wanted to breastfeed. I really did. And the amount of respect that I have for you, CC, is just, it overwhelms me. And I thank you for doing what you're doing, for women so they can realize that this is a choice for them. I want to read something that CC wrote. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll just read some of it because these words just really stuck with me. So her blog is called Goldish Liquid, not liquid gold, Goldish Liquid. And it says, are you stupid? Are you dumb? Or are you dumb? What in the hell would possess you to breastfeed a new, precious, innocent life? Do you hate her or something? Why break something that ain't broken? You already know the drill. Birth the baby, give the baby the little bottles they have waiting for you in the hospital. Let your boobs get hard. Grab a cabbage, then cry and be depressed for a little while. That's it. Why you gonna do all this extra shit? You act like it killed you the first time or something. It really could be simple, easy, actually. Formula, bam, baby eats, baby stays free of HIV. You doing too much. Why would you even want to expose a 2021 heartbeat to your 2008 virus? For another time, you already did that with Zion. You was lucky when he came out of your hole and was still negative. Now you're just tripping. Why would you even consider putting a baby on your breast? You know that shit is toxic. You got to be a selfish motherfucker. Why can't you just make a bottle and go on raising a second negative HIV child? That did something to me when I read it. And I wish I could read the whole thing, but you guys can go to the Well Project and type in Goldish Liquid and read it. It did something to me when I read it. And talk to us about why you chose to write it. And sometimes, we're scared to use certain words, but I always say, write what you feel, because then people can get a sense of what's going on. And that's why I said it struck right here with me when you read it, because people think you're crazy when you want to breastfeed. But why? This is how God made us, to breastfeed, regardless if you're living with HIV or not. What woman doesn't want to breastfeed their child?
Some women, some parents don't want to breastfeed, and their choice is everyone's. And I'm kind of that one that's like, you tell me I can't do something, I need to understand why I can't. And then it makes me want to do it even that much more. So that's something that came with getting an HIV diagnosis. Like, some things were going to change. My first question was, will I ever be able to have kids? The nurse that I asked seemed kind of reluctant, but I was able to prove that wrong. Within the first 2 years of my diagnosis, I had Zion. Breastfeeding did not come up in the conversation. It pretty much was this undertone of just be grateful that you're able to have a child and that their child is negative and go on about your business. I didn't argue, but then I went through heavy postpartum depression afterwards, because as I stood in that shower and that milk flowed out of my body and my breasts were hurting, and these were unfamiliar sensations to me. I didn't know what any of this was. I just knew that what should be happening is that my breast should be feeding this child. But because of my decision not to get my partner tested back in 2007, 2008, my decision not to use a condom, decisions that I had made so much time before my child was even thought of, were now affecting him to this day. Throw the whole baby away. I'm sorry. Never thought I would be having any other children when I wrote Liquid Gold, which was the precursor to Goldish Liquid. Because at that time, you know, that's what they say, breast is best. This is the great thing for the baby. And yet I could not offer it to my child. So now here we go, 11 years later, and I get pregnant with another child. So grateful. And I was talking a big game, big stuff. Like, we should have this choice to feed our children however we want to, support it. But now I really had to eat those words, because now how are you going to feed this baby? And just seeing that there were so many providers. The Well Project sat down in October of 2020, and we sat down with all of these experts, people that were in agreement that there could be some benefits of women living with HIV breastfeeding their children. I had never been in a space where so many people supported something that I felt like was unattainable for so long. So I was like, okay, cool. I had these people behind me, or at least know that there is someone that I can go back to that would be on my side. The ball gets named Goldish Liquid because now that I fought from before, my first ultrasound, to be able to make this decision however I wanted to make this decision. And then now I get here, and we're almost 5 months breastfeeding. Baby has gotten all negative HIV results. And although I'm not experiencing postpartum depression for the reasons I did with Zion, it's still here. Those thoughts are what I wrote out in Goldish Liquid to get to that point of deciding how I was going to feed her. It's like, why would you do this? And I did that the whole entire 9 months. But something, I've worked with her so much, I got in the hospital when she came out, they put the baby on my chest, and then the baby just went over to my breast. I'm like, wow. And then now to psych my mind back to, it's okay, Cece, you are not toxic. It's okay. You're not hurting the baby. Cece, you have support. It's been such a roller coaster. So the liquid, is great, but sometimes it hurts. Sometimes I'm tired of it. Sometimes I just want to give her a bottle. But I'm so grateful that I'm even in a space to be able to complain about that right now. So that's it.
Thank you. That liquid is gold, Cece. That liquid is gold. Again, I just want to thank you for being that woman, to make that choice. It always takes one person to do something so everybody else could see that it's okay. And so I want to tell you, thank you for being that person to let other women know that it's okay. I want to talk a little bit about, just women having informed choices. And I think, Olivia, you talk about, reproductive justice and the things that women need. We've been fighting and fighting for so long. It's just like we're still fighting. They're telling women they can't have abortions, come on. So what is your take on women's choices? I want to hear a little bit about what you have to say.
I'm so glad that you asked that. And honestly, I'm really glad that you brought kind of that piece around abortion and that struggle into the conversation, because it's all connected. And as far as, folks who may be coming to this, this program, who may be kind of new to issues surrounding HIV, there's really a connection there that has to do with bodily autonomy, right? And, sort of medical institutions and political institutions sort of striving since, arguably the founding of this country to control the choices of women, particularly Black women and other women of color. And, and that's really kind of where that's kind of where the rubber meets the road as far as our work around breast or chest feeding and HIV. I mean, just it was, really beyond, what we've, in addition to what we've been talking about. And actually, you know what, before I even continue that sentence, I really wanted to, well, the reason why I was kind of shaking my hand to come off mute to begin with, just to say, Cece, also, thank you so much for just being who you are, beyond the fact that you have been so open with your experience around breastfeeding, and just a powerhouse before you even put that baby to your breast around this work, and just writing about it, and just your vulnerability around sharing your experience, and just being who you are, just being such a skilled, warm, brilliant, just like really powerful presence in, in the world, in our work, in my life. I'm just so grateful that I get to work with you, and I'm so grateful to get to, I'm getting a little emotional. I'm really grateful to just get to witness your journey, and also just like, I'm just grateful to be your coworker. I'm grateful to be your friend. I'm grateful to know you. And I just love you very much. And I'm just glad to be here and get to say that. But yeah, I mean, just building off, I mean, everything that you said is so just right around, I mean, both of you, D2, as far as just letting women know that this is a choice that they can make. And also part of our work is making, I mean, and this goes back to what Krista, you were saying as well, is making it possible to enjoy that as a choice, and not as something that needs to happen in secret, or be a fight, or be something that, as pointing back to your blog, Cece, that's something that that someone needs to sort of, be glad and grateful that they can even do. I mean, these are our bodies, these are women's bodies, like, and people should be able to, and in fact, it's the medical community's responsibility to make the information available to people to be able to make actual choices, not just kind of consent, or just kind of say, well, okay, whatever you say that you think is the best thing, I'm going to do that because you are wearing a white coat, or you have this training, or you're kind of the, you're in leadership at this institution, or you have this kind of, kind of structural power. But really to be able to say, okay, I'm going to look at all of the options, I'm going to look at all of the potential consequences, and be able to, and actually look at what the true consequences and the true risks are, and be able to weigh that for oneself and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do based on having the most up-to-date information available to me. And I mean, that's something that we fight for and that we strive for, around women living with HIV, and breast or chest feeding, and sexuality, and having babies, and just sort of, and being in charge of our, sort of taking charge of folks on their own medical care and their own bodies and their own experiences. And it's something that we, that's fought for across the board for women in general, and particularly for Black women and other women of color. I feel like I'm talking a little fast. I should probably slow down. But I mean,
You're
in addition,
good.
but in
You're
addition
good.
to, I do also want to point to the fact that, I mean, choice includes choosing not to breastfeed. I mean, we see these posters that say breast is best, it's so great, breastfeeding. I mean, as a breastfeeding parent, that is definitely, and as someone who's also a perinatal health advocate, I believe that is true. I also believe that if it doesn't fit with a woman's experience, if there are other things going on in her life and with her health, where she's like, you know what, I'm good, I'm gonna, do formula, that ought to be a choice as well. And safe, available formula should be something that women have access to, regardless of their HIV status, if they decide that that's what they want to do. And again, back to that piece around decision, is that people ought to have all the information and all the resources available for that to actually be a choice, to be able to say, I could do any of these things, and I know what will happen if I do it. Which one am I going to choose? And also part of it is really just is, and I'll stop in a second, I feel like I'm talking a lot, but yeah, part of making that a choice is letting people know that a threat of calling CPS, Child Protective Services, a threat of,
That part.
involving the law in any way should not play a role in the healthcare of a woman living with HIV. It should not play a role in the healthcare of any woman or any person. I mean, it's really, I mean, I feel like HIV is sort of the starting point, and oftentimes, even beyond our work, has really been a model for looking at these inequities and these problems that we face in society more broadly, but the lens is
Yeah.
HIV, and that's sort of like our little field, like our little sort of sandbox we're playing in, or working in. But I mean, this is a larger issue that around sort of the family regulation system, and it's just been really interesting and really infuriating to sort of connect that with HIV criminalization, a field in which there's already awareness that kind of folks who are working around those issues are working to spread, that the criminal laws should not be a response to decisions having to do with health, decisions having to do with interpersonal experiences, and yeah, just really just not only kind of encouraging women living with HIV to be their own advocates and sort of getting that circle together to really to bolster that advocacy, but also letting people who are making these threats know, like, this is not okay. Like, this is
Yeah.
not something that ought to be part of the work that you do, rather than just always being reactive, but proactively being like, this is not evidence-based, like, this is not something that this is harmful to families and harmful to women and harmful to people's health. So I will stop there.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Krista.
I was just one thing to add is that, around the sexual and reproductive health and justice component, it's really evident, there's been a little bit added to the new National HIV/AIDS strategy, but in the HIV epidemic federal plan and in the National HIV/AIDS strategy, it's like the sexual and reproductive health of women living with HIV is like kind of just absent, and like and what we're trying to push that needs to happen, but this is all part of that. And so, and also the pregnancy, the sexual pleasure and desire of women, it's been so focused on biomedical interventions, undetectable viral load. I mean, there has been more attention brought to the quality of life and mental health. There still needs to be more of that, but the actual, lives of women and the sexual and reproductive health, integration into addressing that for a woman living with HIV is just, it's not there. So we need to do better within our, community, and what, our community is kind of pushing out to the United States for sure. So that's just something I just want to kind of emphasize. And it's something that we're trying to speak up on, whenever we can. So to raise that, our partners at PWN have been very vocal about that and doing a lot of great work. And so hopefully that will be continuing to evolve, but and we hope that we can kind of work to also incorporate this part of the informed decisions around breast and chest feeding into that movement. So, and then just one other thing I just wanted to quickly mention, because we're talking about the evidence, and one thing that just gets lost in this a lot is just, the health benefits to mother and child around breastfeeding, and then the health risks to mother and child by not breastfeeding. And so we're only looking at this one piece of transmission. And when you really look at all the, potential long-term health benefits to mother and child, if the woman chooses to breastfeed, and all the, increased risk by not breastfeeding, it's just kind of mind-blowing. And it's really important that that is something that is spoken about in context, because we're, it's more than just this less than 1%, transmission rate. There's a lot more that could really, impact the mother and child's life.
Goodness. This is, I'd like to have you guys on again because this is just a topic, a conversation that needs to be talked about often, not just one time here and there. It needs to be talked about often. And like I said to you guys before we started, that I try my hardest to join every webinar that you have, because this information is so important for women to learn about and to hear about. I may be 52 years old, but I'm still learning and growing as I go along. And I need this information to share with other people. And you talked about a little bit, Olivia, about the CDC. And I always say to people, the CDC gets their data from us. So why are you waiting for them to put it up? We know our bodies, we know who we are. They get their data from people who live with HIV. It was the same piece with U equals U when everyone started yelling. And then you had people say, you're a terrible advocate. You shouldn't be doing this. People were getting death threats because they were talking about U equals U. I had a gentleman reach out and say, I called the CDC and they don't agree with this. And I says, okay, the CDC gets their data from us. Now it's on the CDC website. And I say, now these people who said this, they're quiet as a church mouse. Even though it still says effectively no risk, the CDC changed that in 2019. But people don't realize how long it takes for them to change things on their website. So I can't wait for them to change this for women and breastfeeding on their website. You know it's coming. I know it's coming, and I cannot wait. And I hope everybody shouts it to the rooftop when they do change it, because it needs to be changed like now.
It's changing, and I just have to say that, you know, we've been firsthand like involved in and knowing that it's in progress. But I do have to say that, like, just to shout out that there are advocates, not us, but doctors that are working for women living with HIV that have been in there, like pushing and fighting and getting scrappy with like kind of these folks that aren't related to the field so closely, that are in charge of the actual changes. So just to shout out to like the not all heroes wear capes, you know, situation. And sometimes they're invisible voices that people don't know, like how hard people have been working. You know, I was speaking to one of them like yesterday, and, you know, she said like 4 years ago or something, it still was like, there was no like language other than it's not recommended on the perinatal guidelines. And then she said at one point, someone said, hey, you know, we'll let you add 2 sentences about this. And then from there, like if you go there now and all the language about this is how you support a woman if she chooses to, and just it's much more comprehensive and like, you know, affirming it still can get better. And that's what everyone's working towards. But like they've been in there doing that work really.
What about the women who have providers that say to them, well, if you breastfeed, you know, I'm going to call the police on you, you know, I'm going to call the authorities. You know, how does that make one feel just as a woman, knowing that she has choices? And a lot of women who say that they're going to breastfeed, I'm sure they've already been in contact with a group of people or someone that has told them that they're able to do it, but the provider is not telling them that they can do it. So what do you say to the women who have providers that are telling them that this is something that they shouldn't do? Should they find another physician? What should they do? And Cece, what did you do? How did that happen for you? And was it easy for you to tell your physician, or did you have to switch to another position so you can have a team of people helping you? I mean, how does that all work?
Well, like I said, we had just got out of the October 2020 convening. So when I went into the doctor's office in February of that next year, like, yes, I want to breastfeed. I thought she was going to be on board. She said no. And that if that was something that I wanted to do, that there was no doctor in America that would support me in doing that. And that if I did decide to do it, that I would need to be quiet about it, because the pediatrician that they work with is known to call DHS or CPS on parents. So I felt shut down immediately. I probably was only between 8 and 10 pregnant and had already been faced with that decision. So a provider that I had been seeing for about 10 years, I left her because I needed to go find someone that would support me. And to go back, I know that I am very open with my experience, but this faith, this courage that I have, the bravery that some people perceive it as, was only built by those that have come before me. So if I had never seen someone like a Heather O'Connor or advocates that I know that are positive and maybe not so outward with their experiences, I got a permission, Alyssa Crawford, woman born with HIV who fed her child, Antoinette Jones, like to be able to watch them as women that were born with HIV to then make that decision to feed their child. It's like, whoa, that is so profound to me. If y'all can do it, then I can do it. So I know that I'm a face that people see often, but I definitely did not get here alone. And if a person is not being supported, the provider is one aspect of support, which is very, very important. You don't have to stay with that provider. I know that I've lived in other spaces where providers were not so accessible. So those are cases that, you know, and had to be worked on individually. But you do not have to stay with a provider that is not listening to your needs or unwilling to support your wants and desires. You don't have to. I wouldn't have been able to stay with someone that I love so much, my provider of 10 years, and have the outcome that I have right now. So that's my advice. Find you a tribe.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. You know, letting women know what they can do. I always say, find another physician. Just find another one, somebody that's going to support you. I want to tell all of you ladies, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for your insight. And Cece, thank you for your transparency, you know. Keep informing women, keep talking about it. A lot of people don't know what's going on in the background. This looks easy right here, but in the background, I know it's tough. I know it's a lot of work, but thank you so much for doing what you do for women, for all women who live with HIV, just all women in general. The Well Project. I want to tell all of you, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we can't end before we talk about the U equals U piece, right? Like, just because that's how we started really, I mean, you know, Olivia and I joke, like, I think in 2009, when I started with the Well Project, I was like, we need some resources around breastfeeding, but, you know, it was always kind of like never quite happened. And then when we started doing some work around U equals U and realized that this was causing a lot of people to question, does U equals U apply to breastfeeding? And we realized that really need to figure out, like, getting more awareness around this and hearing people say, yes, it does, but knowing that we don't actually have that evidence at this time. And also, like, what could happen if a woman gets that information, ends up breastfeeding, and then has her child, you know, called. So you have to be very sensitive around making sure that there is all of that support and information. So yeah, so I mean, as of right now, we can't technically say U equals U, you know, because it is less than 1%. It's not zero. But, you know, we're hoping to keep pushing for more research, because the research we have is very limited, and, you know, it was not done in a high resource country. And so, you know, people say it doesn't say it yet, and we don't know if it ever will, but we're hopeful that there's indication that it could, you know, and as we have additional research, and there are pockets of providers around the country here in the US that are conducting, you know, kind of their own little mini research, and they're trying to compile all those so that we'll maybe have some more information, and maybe that will allow for like a NIH funded research project or something like that. Who knows? But right now, it's very much a question that people ask, and so as of right now, not yet.
Well, the percentage is so low.
It is low. It's
so low. What does that mean?
That's
less than 1% when it comes to HIV. It seems like 1% is such a big deal. Like, but when I was leaving the hospital with my birth control, they said this is 99%.
99%. But what happened to the 1%? It was okay
that doesn't
for that. I like how you put that. Okay, again, ladies, thank you so much. Is there any last words that you guys want to say to people who are watching. But before we go, let me say, if you guys want to reach out to the Well Project, you can go to thewellproject.org, thewellproject.org. You can also find them on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram as The Well Project. And if you want to look up CC as Sierra Coven, I always type in CI on Instagram when I want to see what she's doing, and she comes right up on Instagram. Any last words, ladies, that you want to say before we go? Anything inspiring to help any of the ladies out there?
Well, I want Cece to have the last word, so I'll jump in and say just thank you for having us. And like to echo Olivia's words and Dee's, thank you, Cece, for all that you do. And, really like, I was tearing up too. So we do love you and we're so grateful. And, that you are sharing and empowering so many and kind of really, I think, truly having a huge impact on this work that we are trying to do. So thank you. And we just want as many people to just kind of get the information and join forces so that we can keep the more education, not only a community has, but really a big chunk needs to be at the provider level, because that is where I think, there's a lot of the misinformation and or just don't know the information. And so let's all work together and like make this not a question. That a woman has the informed choice.
Thank you. Cece. We're waiting for you, Cece.
Sorry, didn't know if Olivia wanted to give some final word.
Oh, if you do, Olivia, you can go next and then Cece can go last.
Sure. Just quickly, I mean, echoing everything that everyone else has said, this was really lovely. Dee, thanks so much for having us on.
Really
to folks out there whose interest is piqued, who maybe, just expending their feelings themselves, I would just say listen to your body and get yourself a squad, get yourself a tribe that will support your choices across the board, in community, in that clinic. Just get yourself get that support. And we're here to support that process in any way that we can as the Well Project.
Thank you.
And we so welcome you to our community. Oh my gosh, the Well Project is like a plethora of information. I love the programming that we have going on around breastfeeding, but just posted a fact sheet yesterday on diarrhea and HIV. So if there is anything that you are looking for related to women, HIV, all of that, we have it in the form of a fact sheet, a webinar, slide sets. We have almost everything. So thank you so much for having us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much, ladies. All right, you guys, we're going to close. And again, thank you. You can go to thewellproject.org, and you can reach out to them with any questions that you need. Like Cece said, there's so much resources on their website. It's so many resources. So again, this is Positively Deep Discussion. You have to remember that HIV still exists. You have to get tested. You have to use protection, because if you have contracted HIV, you could get on medication and you could live a better, healthier life. That was an amazing show. Ladies, we have choices. Don't ever let anybody take your choice away from you. Speak up, speak loudly. And if those physicians or other people don't hear you, reach out to organizations like the Well Project. Again, that is thewellproject.org, thewellproject.org. So much information that you can get for them. So we're going to close out and we're going to play that intro that I love so much. And again, thank you everyone for being part of the Positively Deep Discussion show. Thank you so much. reach out to me. PositivelyD.com with a Z, not an S. If you want to be a featured guest, you can follow me on TikTok, Positively D with a Z and not an S. Come on, y'all. Life is so good. We only have one life to live. Please live it up. Have a happy day.